Devices from HTC's Desire lineup were never intended to be flagship smartphones, where the spec list is packed with the latest and greatest in technologies and components to try and edge out over their competition. Such is the case with the latest Desire. But did HTC go too far in paring down the spec list and sacrifice user experience? Let's find out in the HTC Desire 816 review. At first glance, it may look like the Desire 816 spec sheet was the proverbial chopping block, where HTC cut specifications in order to cut costs. Unlike its flagship sibling, the One M8, the Desire 816 is powered by a much more modest quad-core Snapdragon 400, clocked at 1.6 GHz. At 5.5 inches, the Desire's screen is noticeably bigger than the One M8's. The two phones look very similar, but the Desire uses a cost-saving 720p display instead of 1080p. The big Super LCD panel still manages a respectable 267 ppi pixel density with bold, bright colors, and it looks fantastic. Flanking the screen is a pair of front-firing boom sound speakers, which are loud, clear, and produce more depth and tone than we're used to on other mid-range phones. Desire 816 is a big phone, or is it a small phablet? Here, HTC opted to include LTE support, but kept its Wi-Fi limited to 2.4 GHz. In our tests, Wi-Fi was quick and reliable, but T-Mobile's high-speed data bands weren't supported, so we never got to test anything quicker than Edge, which we're sure had a positive impact on our battery life. Moving on to software. Sense UI 6 is a lot less in-your-face than previous versions of HTC's customized UI. Interacting with the Desire was intuitive, both for those used to stock Android as well as those used to Sense. HTC doesn't go overboard with bloat, but even still, almost half of the Desire's 8 gig internal storage is used up right out of the box. Thankfully, HTC included a micro SD card slot capable of accepting up to a 128 gig card. It also included a very useful settings panel to instruct the device to put files from various sources onto the card. Unfortunately, moving apps to the SD card is still a manual process, but at least it can be done. Let's dig into performance. The Snapdragon 400 SoC was never intended to win any performance contests, which is reflected in its benchmark scores. In everyday use, the Desire was responsive and quick, and we never found ourselves waiting on it. While we don't want to call it lag because it certainly didn't feel like it, we did experience an occasional hesitation, but nothing that was particularly distracting. Everyday apps were smooth, blink feed was fluid, even some of the more graphically intense games in the Play Store ran just fine. 2600 mAh LiPo battery inside the Desire netted us 2 solid days of use. This is due to its power-efficient CPU and GPU, and underscored by the 720p versus 1080p screen. Keep in mind that LTE and HSPA consume more power than Edge, so your battery life will likely be less than ours, but should still easily get you through an entire day of moderate use. The Desire 816's camera has all the right specs, 13 megapixels for stills and 1080p for video. Though there's a lot of detail in the Desire shots, it doesn't do as well in low light conditions, but the pictures did turn out quite well. Images were generally sharp, colors were vibrant, and the shutter speed in the stock camera app was quick, though not instantaneous. Phone calls were above average too. Callers said we sounded crisp and clear, and they came through very loud. We had to turn the volume down a few times, which was a welcome change. About some pros and cons. The HTC Desire 816 is a great value, especially for a device with such a large screen. It's got loud, clear, front-firing speakers that make listening to music and watching videos a dream. To top it all off, it's got outstanding battery life. As far as cons go, that screen, it's only 720p. The backplate is a slippery fingerprint magnet, and it squeaks when you hold it. Rounding it out, there's no NFC, no tap to beam, and no Google Wallet. Overall, the HTC Desire 816 is a very enjoyable phone to use. It's big enough to comfortably watch movies on, with a bright screen and wonderful speakers to back it up. But it's not so big that you can't comfortably carry it around or use it as a normal phone. Sure, HTC had to cut some corners, but did so to keep the price down. All factors considered, the sacrifices are well worth it. The Desire 816 is much closer to a flagship than it is to a mid-tier phone. More on the Desire 816, a whole bunch of sample photos, benchmark and battery results, and our final score, head over to the full review at Pocketnow.com. The link is down in the description right next to the like button, which you should press if you enjoyed this video. Until next time, this has been Joe Levi with Pocketnow. Thanks for watching.